Here are all the things not to do in Yellowstone National Park. Don't expect to see the entire park in one day. Yellowstone National Park is massive. It is such a huge piece of land, and it may seem tempting to squeeze everything into one day. However, you're going to end up driving and sitting in your car for most of it. I'd recommend spending a day in each corner of the park. For example, spend the entire day in and around Old Faithful. There's so much to do and see there. You could spend an entire day filling up your itinerary. Don't stand too close to the geothermal geysers because on occasion they do get tourists wet. Not only do you not want scorching water to pour down on your head, but if this water gets on your camera or phone, it is said to ruin it forever. Number 2, don't get too close to the wildlife. This one seems obvious, but you'd be amazed at the amount of strange things that tourists do when they're around these animals. I see a lot of tourists take pictures like these for social media where they put their hands up and pretend like they're touching the animal. Don't do this because it is super dangerous. Don't expect your iPhone photos to look like these photos with the zoom lens. Invest in a nice lens and don't inch closer and closer to these animals, especially during the mating season. These lenses can be expensive, but you can also rent them to save some money. This is a good one. This is a Canon EF 70-200, or even better, this one, the Canon EF 100-400 lens. Or even better, use this 1.4 magnifier to get a 140-560 millimeter zoom. Don't walk off into the middle of nowhere just to get pictures because likely around the corner, most of these animals are going to be really close to the road. It is not necessary to become part of the herd like these guys are. If this guy gets trampled, he's going to have a quarter-mile hike back to the car. Don't expect your cell phone to work everywhere. In most major towns in Yellowstone, and I put towns in quotes because they're like villages, you're not going to have cell service work in between those towns and you're likely to lose service. That's okay because you are in Yellowstone and you don't need to be looking at social media anyway. Don't think that Old Faithful is the only geyser to see. There are literally dozens of geysers and geothermal features right behind Old Faithful. Most tourists will line up to see one eruption of Old Faithful, get in their cars and drive off. This is really sad because there's so much more to see and do. Right behind there's a boardwalk that takes you all the way around. You can see springs, hot pots, geysers. We saw this geyser go off that went up 70 yards in the air, way bigger and way cooler than Old Faithful. This one is huge. Don't get up late. This is the most important tip, and if you don't remember anything you saw in this video, remember this. Getting up early means less traffic, better chance of seeing animals, and getting to park where you actually want to park, in the actual parking lots. Take Grand Prismatic for example. After about 9:30 in the morning, this parking lot fills up fast in the summer. This is what the parking lot looks like and how far down the road people need to park. If you get here too late, you're going to be forced to walk almost a mile on the side of the road just to get to the entrance of Grand Prismatic, and then you're going to be there with a whole bunch of people anyways. So don't get up too late. Just behind the main entrance, there is a short hike that puts you in a great viewing area of the spring, which has a way better view. All these people down here are looking at a really flat angle and are getting too close to the spring and are actually just taking pictures of steam. Instead, come up here and you can see the whole thing like you see in the Instagram pictures. Don't expect to see a grizzly bear. They are arguably the most rare of all the animals in the park. I worked here for an entire summer and I only saw 2 grizzlies the entire time, both of which were over a mile away. Black bears are much more common, and I used to see them all over, especially in the northeast corner of the park. Don't get too close to these elk. At Mammoth Hot Springs, there's a lot of elk that come out during the cooler part of the day and they feed in this green grass. However, the park rangers spend most of their time managing tourists, so don't feed them, don't pet them, don't get too close. This one also seems really obvious. Don't take wildlife photos in the middle of the day. Here's 2 reasons. First, in the middle of the day, the animals aren't out. You're unlikely to find them by the road or even see them at all. A lot of times these animals are up in the woods bedded, and in the morning time and the evening is when they come out. Also in the middle of the day, you also get a lot of contrast, which means that there's a lot of light and dark. So the shadows create a whole lot of contrast in the photos. This makes your photos not nearly as high quality. The softer the light, the better the photos. So that's usually in the morning. Don't confuse bison for buffalo. It is the same thing and the same animals. Don't expect Google Maps driving times to be correct. Just because it says it's going to take 20 minutes to go from one place to another doesn't mean that you're not going to run into a buffalo jam or have to slow down for some reason. Driving in the park generally takes about twice the time that you think it's going to take. Don't come in July if you can avoid it. This is when everyone comes here. It is the most busy part of the season, it's the highest traffic, and parking is a nightmare. If you can make it in like June or September, those are the best months in my opinion. You may have the place all to yourself. When I worked here, September was my favorite month. It was cold, but the elk were bugling, the elk were in rut, that means they were moving around, you could see them more, and the rush of the summer tourism was at an end, and it felt completely different from the month of July. Lastly, don't book your hotel rooms or camping spots too late. At the beginning of the year is usually when you want to book everything, and it books up super quickly.
Dạ, cái tôm, cái